present Super 7, which extends, it's one of the 3 largest districts in the state of Georgia. We extend from River Road South to Doraville North, proudly representing over 350,000 constituents. Tonight, we're here to talk about a variety of very important topics. And I would like to begin by introducing, honestly, one of the most distinguished panels that I have ever had the honor of assembling on behalf of DeKalb County, Georgia. So I'll very briefly tell you what their job descriptions are. Ms. Chambliss works very closely with roads and drainage to ensure that we have road quality, safety, as well as adequate forecasting, design, and construction. We also have here this evening Mr. Andrew Baker. And I don't see Mr. Baker in the room at this time, but he is the Director of DeKalb County Planning and Sustainability. As such, and in such capacity, he manages long-range planning, current planning, building services, neighborhood empowerment, as well as code compliance. And his extensive background in urban planning includes over 20 years in the private sector. We also have with us this evening Ms. Loretta Ellis. She is the Director of Property Tax, and she works in the office of our Chief Deputy Tax Commissioner, Mr. Erwin Johnson. Are you present, Ms. Ellis? Okay, great. Of course, DeKalb County's tax office is responsible for both vehicle revenue as well as property taxes. We have Mr. Michael German. Are you present? Oh, yes, he is. Now, he is with the state of Georgia, and he is the State of Georgia Housing and Urban Development Federal Housing and Urban Development Field Office Director. He serves as HUD's liaison to our mayors, city managers, county commissioners, elected representatives, state and local officials, congressional delegates, nonprofit organizations, as well as private entities and other stakeholders. He is responsible for overseeing the delivery of HUD programs and services to communities and individuals, as well as determining the efficiency and effectiveness of those programs. We have Mr. Michael Rich with us. And I don't see that he has arrived. Traffic is not good, but we're going to start the conversation because he is en route. Mr. Rich is a professor at Emory University. In his studies, his research includes public policy, welfare reform, and issues related to the accessibility of low-income households and job opportunities. He is considered a foremost expert in the area of gentrification and revitalization of communities, and he has worked in public housing as well as empowerment zones and social change issues. We have with us Mr. Alan Mitchell. I do not see Mr. Mitchell at this time, but Mr. Mitchell is the Director of Community Development for DeKalb County. Additionally, he serves as the Assistant Director for Human and Community Development, and he oversees funds allocated from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to help develop viable urban communities within DeKalb County. He specifically works with benefiting low to moderate income persons. We have Ms. Kimberly Nesbitt. Thank you for being here. She is the State Program Administrator for the Georgia Department of Transportation. And thank you for coming in, Mr. Mitchell. As such, Ms. Nesbitt oversees multi-million-dollar projects by GDOT. The Georgia Department of Transportation is currently in phase 1 of the I-20 interchange project. Some of you in this room may be familiar with this, but we're going to talk extensively tonight about the I-20 interchange and the impact that it will have on our community. It is a $300 million project that will expand I-20 from Columbia Drive to Lithonia Industrial, as well as I-85 will be extended from Glenwood to North Rainbow Drive, by 2 lanes on each side. How many of you were familiar with that project? Okay. We have Mr. James Cromartie. He works with Atlanta ANDP, the Atlanta Neighborhood Development Project. His mission is to promote, create, and preserve affordable and mixed income communities through direct development, lending, policy research, as well as advocacy across Metro Atlanta. We have Mr. Ed Patton, and I see Mr. Patton is in place. He is the president of the DeKalb County Board of Realtors. He has more than 20 years of real estate experience, and he has been a part of the DeKalb County community, so he is very familiar with the landscape of housing and property values across DeKalb. So we're happy to have him. We have Mr. Pete Walker. Yes, thank you, Pete. Thank you, Mr. Walker, for being here. He is the president and CEO of Housing Development Corporation, and as such, the HDC owns and manages more than 1,500 units of affordable housing and administers more than 6,200 housing choice vouchers in DeKalb County, Georgia. We have the Assistant Chief, Mr. Gregory Paddock, who's here with us, and thank you so much to our officers. He has over 22 years in policing, and his positions range from uniform division to criminal investigation, as well as internal affairs. We have Chief A.B. Caitlin with us. He is what I call homegrown. He actually graduated from Towers High School, and during his 25 years of working with the South Precinct, his experience spans from everything from homicide, assault unit, to the cold case unit, domestic violence unit, financial crimes unit, and he serves as an aide to the chief of police. And last but not least, we have Mr. Ted Reinhardt with us. Ted works, of course, for DeKalb County, and he is the Deputy COO of Infrastructure. And as such, he's responsible for the departments that manage the county's water, wastewater, roads, drainage, transportation, sanitation, parks, and fleet services. And he has served in positions across the United States in this area with more than 30 years experience. So let me say thank you to the panel who have so graciously taken the time to come out and be with us this evening to discuss some very important topics. I am, and I consider myself a part of the community, and I listen very carefully to what is happening around us. As such, the first topic that we're going to discuss this evening is gentrification. Allison, can we play the video? What I'd like to do is begin by playing a video, because I want to make sure as we move forward with the discussion that we are on the same page as to exactly what gentrification is and the effects that it has on community.
All over America, neighborhoods are changing. Older places are becoming revitalized, redeveloped. There's probably one close to you. This is known as gentrification, renovating or improving an area to raise its value to middle-class standards. Now, the process can take a while, but it'll create new houses, trendy restaurants, hip coffee shops. And it'll increase property value. What's not to love? Well, for many residents, it's not so great. With the process of values going up and the lack of affordable housing and the inability to keep up with the increasing cost to live, it'll eventually displace many lower-income families. Most often damaged by this process, minority groups. You see, for many, urban renewal, it can mean minority removal, and there are potentially more negative outcomes for existing residents than benefits. In most places, gentrification is inevitable as society moves forward. But at City Fields, we believe that it can be done better. We believe it's the responsibility of everyone to manage the process of gentrification in a way that provides dignity to everyone. So let's work with existing residents so we can amplify their voice, create development plans that include existing low-income residents. This will create an environment of dignity and justice for all residents.
Gentrification occurs here in DeKalb County, areas including Glenwood, Belvedere, as well as along Candler Road is in the process of intense gentrification. How many of you in this room tonight, if you would please stand, live in those areas? How many of you who are standing, if you would remain standing, have received solicitations, letters, postcards from realtors who wish to buy or purchase your home? If you would raise your hand. Okay. This is a trend that we're seeing, and you can feel free at this time to take your seat. Of course, I receive calls in the office from folk who say that on a daily basis, they generally have no less than 1 to 3 contacts. Everything from robocalls to phone calls to individuals that literally stop in. And gentrification and the change of community, and the word I like to use is revitalization, it can be a good thing, but in many instances when individuals within these communities that are seasoned communities, from the time they sell that home, they could never live within that community again if they so desired because of the property value change. So as we move forward, I want to ensure personally that within our communities, that when we have home sales, that these sales are, shall I say, managed by real estate professionals that have your best interest in mind. As an elected official, I can't issue a moratorium on the sale of home. That's your inherent right. But what I'd like to do at this time, I'd like to pose this question particularly to Professor Rich and ask him to talk about some of the long-term effects of gentrification that it has on communities based on his research and his knowledge. Okay? He has not arrived at this time. I also have several real estate professionals in the room, including Mr. Patton, who I welcome to engage in dialogue. And we will have a separate time for the community to have Q&As. I will say that this year, we actually had a rollback of the millage rate in DeKalb County, Georgia. Now for homeowners, what does that mean? That means that if your taxes increased, it wasn't the result of an increase on our behalf, it was because in many instances across DeKalb County, property values are rising. One of the key factors for gentrification is property taxes. With the sale of so many homes that are taking places within communities, it will be probably 2 to 3 years before you see the full effect of the sale of these homes. Because of course, your tax digest is based upon your property value. And we do have representation. I did see Mr. Erwin Johnson himself, our tax commissioner, walk in. Okay? And you might as well go ahead and come up. You came to the dinner, but we'll put you on the menu. But we do have representation from your office, so I am not going to do that. So if we could have someone speak to how our taxes are derived, that would be wonderful, because I want you to understand the long-term effect of the increase in property values. Okay. And I would also like Mr. Erwin, for both of you, to address the issue of how taxes are configured in DeKalb. And Jay, thank you. And let's use both microphones until which time we open the floor. So let's take that one down as well so you can have a seat, and JP will bring over the microphone for you. Mm-hmm. Okay, Mr. Erwin.
Okay. What was your question again?
I want you as the tax commissioner. One of the effects of gentrification is basically, it focuses around tax digest. And as property values increase, of course, it affects the property value of homes in surrounding areas. So can you tell individuals how changes of property values will affect their property?
Well, in DeKalb, okay. All right. Can everybody hear me? And he told me to stand up so you can see me too. All right. As the commissioner said earlier, the tax values or fair market value in DeKalb County have been rising the last several years. And the question becomes for homeowners is that as my fair market value is rising, your question becomes, can I get that money for my house? And that becomes an issue a lot of us in the community are struggling with. The assessment of your property values, which is based on 40% of the fair market value. So that's what your taxes are based on. For example, a $100,000 house, all right, your taxes would be based on 40% of the value, $100,000. So that means you would be paying taxes, okay, on $60,000, because 40% would leave you, okay, $60,000. So that's what you'd be paying taxes on, rather than the total $100,000. All right. Taxes are an expense, just like any other expense in your home. And because if you're on fixed income or you're on limited income and those kinds of things, then as prices go up, your income is not going up commensurate with, say, the increase in the assessed values, 3, 4, 5, 6% a year. That creates pressure in terms of where your properties are going to be sellable. And it also, on the other side, makes some of the community properties attractive for investors because they want the property values to go up. So you have competing interests. A homeowner wants his taxes low, all right, and wants services to be held at a certain level. But your taxes have to move according to the service requirements that you as taxpayers are asking the county and the Board of Commissioners to provide for you. So my only disclaimer is that I'm the only person that probably can help you in terms of reducing your tax burden because we offer exemptions. And those exemptions are based on, of course, your age and income, and they start at age 62 and go up to age 70, and there are about 9 or 10 different exemptions that you can get. And Loretta and I are here to answer those kinds of questions. I like to come to these kinds of forums oftentimes so that we can create an understanding about how taxes work, tax administration. The earlier question I think you asked about how does a tax bill get generated? Well, that's a multifaceted approach between the Board of Commissioners, the school board, all of the various cities in DeKalb, and a decision about millage rates. On your tax bill, and I think most of you either have gotten a tax bill lately, and I was almost afraid to even bring that up, all right? But on your tax bill, when you look at it, all right, there are a combination of factors that create the bill. And I won't go through that individually, as collectively rather, but we can talk to you either tonight or at a later point specifically about how your tax bill is created. Because I could take up probably the whole meeting talking about the tax bill. And I'm sure you have probably at least a question for everybody in the room. So am I covering some basics?
You have covered the basics, and I'm also going to ask Ms. Ellis, because one of the things that I want everyone in the room to understand, though, is the tax valuation is based upon the property value. So as property values within an area increase, so will that property evaluation, because it is based upon homes that are located within that proximity. So that is a fact of what we see happening in many of our communities. And Ms. Ellis, thank you for joining us. And at this time, would you care to add to what has already been stated?
I just want to, repeat what Mr. Johnson said about the exemptions. That is a very valuable resource for residents in DeKalb County because DeKalb County has a very generous exemption. It has three components. It has the constitutional, it has the freeze assessment, and then there's the host credit. So DeKalb County has one of the most generous homestead exemptions in the state. So that's, I have a board over there that's got information about the senior exemptions. We also have disability exemptions and disabled veteran exemption. The main part of what we do is qualify people for exemptions based on their age and their income, and the exemptions, even just a basic basic exemption can save up to 30% on the tax bill. Senior exemptions and disability exemption can save even more. So that's most of what we do in our office that can save money on the tax bill, especially for people that may be on fixed incomes.
And thank you for that. How many of you in the room were aware that based upon your age, your income, if you're a senior, or you suffer from a disability, that you can receive an actual exemption on your taxes? Great. Because as our communities transform, these are all things, I don't want to see anyone in here in an adverse position because tax liability is increasing, but income is not. I'd also like to bring into this discussion Mr. Patton, because as a real estate professional, I know that you have a great deal of expertise. You've worked within DeKalb County. And can you speak as to the trends in home sales and purchases currently taking place in DeKalb County? Can someone please pass Mr. Patton a microphone? Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Commissioner, for that question. In DeKalb County, there is a pent-up demand for housing, which he asked the question earlier, how many are receiving some form of marketing material for purchasing the home, is because there is a pent-up demand for housing. What we try to do from a real estate standpoint, the DeKalb Association of Realtors is all about private property rights and home ownership. That's what we protect, okay? So when there is a pent-up demand, and I know we're talking about gentrification, and I know we have the expert here, but that comes to supply and demand. I'm sure we'll get more into that as well. But there is a pent-up demand right now for housing. As a matter of fact, I think in DeKalb, the numbers I looked not long ago, we have about 3.5%, meaning that houses that are on the market that are listed now. When I looked at the Georgia Multiple Listing Services numbers, in terms of how many listings are out there versus how many homes are actually selling. So that's a very small number for us, meaning that's why when a home goes on the market now, it sells very fast. That's why you're probably getting, as Mr. Johnson stated, you're probably getting a lot of information for investors too as well, because they're trying to purchase the home. But there are a lot of realtors in the room. You can speak to anyone about looking at the value of your property. There are 1,800 approximately realtors in DeKalb County, and we will be more than happy to get you the right information so you can make a very informed decision.
Thank you. And Professor Rich, thank you so much. I know you have battled traffic, I'm sure, extensively to be in our presence today. And you bring a great deal to the discussion because you are, I would say, our resident expert in many different areas of policy, and you have studied gentrification. And across DeKalb in certain communities, we have active gentrification taking place. Can you speak as to your research and some of the effects that the transition and revitalization of communities has on the individuals within the community and the landscape?
I think the biggest effect of gentrification is what happens to the original residents of the area that's being gentrified. And here we really need to think about the effects on two types of members of the population. We need to think about people who own homes, and some of the discussion already has talked about some of the strategies to try to relieve that pressure on rising property tax burdens through things like exemptions, Some communities have other strategies. Local governments or nonprofit organizations working with homeowners to help keep them in place so they don't have to leave while the value of their properties are rising and in turn the taxes. Some strategies that places have used is kind of a reverse mortgage kind of strategy where the homeowners are able to delay the increment in the increase in the value of their property taxes until the time in which they sell their home, and then the proceeds of that sale are used to pay the local government for that differential in the property tax between what they had been paying before values rose rather sharply and what they were before. Is one strategy for homeowners. There are some others. The more challenging part is what about people that are renting in neighborhoods that are experiencing an increase in gentrification? And this is a particularly challenging problem in DeKalb County for a couple of reasons. Reason number one is if we look over the last decade, the county has lost about a third of its rental housing units that rent for $800 a month or less. So a third of those units have just vanished over the last decade. Some of those have gone the wayside because the properties have been purchased, small apartment complexes or whatever, and been redeveloped and are now renting at higher prices. Some of them have been lost because they were units that had some type of subsidy attached to them. Those subsidy terms expired and the property owner decided to sell the property at market value. So we've had this loss of units at the low end of the market, and then where the supply of rental housing is increased in the county are apartments that are renting for $1,000 a month or more. There's been a 150% increase at the high end of the rental market. At the same time, there's been a decline in the low end. So that is more dealing with the effects of gentrification on renters is a more difficult situation to address, in part because a lot of the renters in gentrifying neighborhoods are living in properties that are under private ownership and private management and don't have some type of a subsidy attached to them. So there's nothing to kind of tampen down the upward pressures on the market. So the strategy that many communities are turning to is developing some type of a preservation compact. I think one of the best examples is in Cook County in Chicago, where there's a coalition of government, nonprofit, for-profit developers and the like that are trying to preserve what we would call the naturally occurring affordable housing, rental housing stock, which tends to be apartments that are in buildings of 20 units or less, and trying to keep those units affordable and preventing them from being converted to the market that might yield a higher rate, and helping to connect property owners with government and nonprofit run programs that may provide some financial support for renovating the properties, but yet keeping the rents affordable. So that's a strategy that places have turned to, but the renter population is more difficult to address. And finally, in DeKalb and in many places around the metro Atlanta area, as other parts of the country, one of the challenges that we face is the real growth in rental units is the conversion of single-family homes into homes that are now being rented. So that a large share of the rental stock is not necessarily in apartment buildings, but it's in single-family homes. And that presents a challenge because there are so many more transactions that have to be negotiated to keep that affordable. And a lot of single-family homes are being rented, waiting for the market to revive. And then once it does, those homes will be sold, and there'll be a further loss of the rental supply.
That is and thank you so much, Professor Rich. That brings us to a very interesting, shall I say, issue that has been prevalent in DeKalb. During the housing crisis of 2008, DeKalb County was one of the hardest hit counties in the state of Georgia. As such, the 30032 zip code, if you were not aware, is the most flipped zip code in America. Many of those homes are owned by landlords and are LLCs. And for me personally, I have done what I can to somewhat wage a war, because in many instances we receive the calls from individuals saying that these properties are unkept. You can immediately tell that this is a rental property. So that has been an ongoing issue here in DeKalb. Now, one of the things that this transitions very nicely into is a discussion on affordable housing. I know during my 8 months as commissioner, we recently passed our master plan that looks at the next 3 years and what housing looks like. Now, one thing government loves that I've found is a study before you take action. In some instances, we want a study to study the study. Now, the study showed that we need an average of 3,200 affordable housing units. But I witnessed us pass a plan that only made a provision for 600. One of the things also that I'm seeing here in DeKalb, we're having far more senior housing units at this point being constructed than affordable housing units. And to Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Walker, to Mr. German, and also I would like to enlist Mr. James Karwati from ANDP, because I'm very familiar with the efforts that are taking place to ensure affordable housing. Let's have that conversation, because with many of our communities in transition, if we are not creating affordable housing, we can have some major problems for many people within our community. So I won't tell you which one to start, but let's start that discussion. Would anyone like to start? Let's start with Mr. German. And you are a DeKalb County resident, aren't you? Okay, let's get your volume on. Thank you.
I'm Michael German, and I'm the field office director for HUD for Georgia. But I also have a regional responsibility. And just to follow up on what we were talking about on the gentrification, I'd like to roll that into affordable housing. So one of the things that happens in metro Atlanta, so I'm going to step outside of DeKalb and bring DeKalb into the conversation we've been having. So we have convened a working group, and that was one thing that Mr. Rich was talking about, how you deal with preservation of affordable housing. Because if you don't preserve it, it's going to go away. And you won't be able to recap it with the funding that we have. So I work very closely with Alan, and I work with Pete Walker, with the Housing Authority. Today I was with the Atlanta Housing Authority looking at their plan. So we have a collaborative that came out of Enterprise Community Partners with HUD, Invest Atlanta, the City of Atlanta. We're talking about Georgia Department of Community Affairs, the Atlanta Beltline, DeKalb County with Allen is there, Brookhaven, Federal Reserve Bank. So all of us meet every other month. And it came out of how do we preserve affordable housing. And the focus was on the trend that was going from Atlanta through Buford Highway in that corridor. We identified 200 properties that had a subsidy. And that's what makes the apartments and the units, whether you're getting them with public housing, you're getting them whatever source, it's the subsidy that keeps it affordable. And at the end of 15 years and 20 years, those owners can roll out and they can take that property, and with that property, they can sell it on the market. So our aim was to preserve affordable housing. And that's what the catalyst is. So the trend that we're talking about, just starting with Atlanta, because everybody thinks about Atlanta. Am I right?
That's right.
Well, they do. They do. But the conversation is what was happening there, and you look at it on the north side, on the west side, with what's going on. Only 13% when you go to Vine City, English City, are homeowners. So you got all those properties sitting there, and the reason why it's not a clear title. So you get into your communities, you don't have a clear title to the properties, and one of the remedies is to have a good will. And you don't have a will where you got 30 people in the link to preserve that property on the front end. So as we move this kind of forward, we're still looking at Atlanta. Just this month was determined to be the fourth fastest growing gentrification area. But the trend has continued not only in Atlanta on the west side, now it's going to East Point, it's going to with investments in Pittsburgh, and now you see the trend that's coming up here. And part of it I see with the affordability side is we need to put the same strategies that they're talking about, bringing the realtors and everybody to the table with us to focus on what's going on here and protecting the properties.
Thank you. And I also want to point out, Mr. German, it's very interesting that you say it's coming out here. Well, as gentrification occurs and with the saturation and the current housing climate in terms of the dollar amounts that are being charged in Metro Atlanta, DeKalb and particularly Candler to Glenwood is very attractive because it still offers that affordability, but you're about 5 to 7 minutes from Metro Atlanta. So as those communities are saturated with a higher rate, then it was only natural that we see this coming. I'd also like, as it relates to affordable housing, this is a conversation that needs to be had because as far as I'm concerned, I need your help. So, Mr. Mitchell, I welcome you to join in on this because in DeKalb County, for builders, for individuals who are willing to construct, and let me say to all of you here, I need to see more of you do business with DeKalb County. If you have a small business, you need to go to DeKalbCountyGA.gov. In that top right-hand search window, you need to type do business, and you need to register your business. On any given week, we sit there and we as commissioners award $15 million, sometimes up to $30 million in contracts. And you cannot have a seat at the table if you don't pull back the chair. So as it relates to affordable housing, we need builders and developers who are willing to come to the table because we have resources. But one of the things that has been a little bit amazing to me is we don't have people that are interested in building, in my opinion. And this is me, 7, interested in building affordable housing. So can we sort of have that conversation, Mr. Mitchell? I respect you immensely, and I know that we've had this conversation on a few different levels, but it's something that needs to be discussed.
Thank you, Commissioner. A little bit loud. I'm Alan Mitchell. I'm Director of Community Development. So I like to speak to a number of topics to include affordable housing. I would like to put a plug in for, candidly, the gentrification comment. We provide help to individuals that might be subject to individuals approaching you in your various communities for selling of your homes. Sometimes you might want to sell your home, but in a lot of cases you perhaps would not like to leave your cherished communities that you've lived in for years. So we have contracts with various nonprofits that I invite you to call my office and we can have you referred. Atlanta Legal Aid and Metro Fair Housing. We've had sessions at 4 of the senior centers, in fact, here at Lew Walker, to enable seniors not to be scammed, give them tips and ideas and things to do to protect you, your asset. Because most of us have our largest asset, not all of us, but most of us have our assets in our homes. And therefore, we cherish them. But there's a time when you have to preserve them through knowing legally what to do. So in cases where you don't have the resources to obtain legal counsel or advice, the county offers a nonprofit funding mechanism. We use federal funds to fund Atlanta legal aid and Metro Fair housing. We also have counseling agencies around the county as well. Green Forest, for example, is one where we can refer you to and you can get help. So I'd like to make you aware of that in the case you run into some issues that you need help on. I suggest you call our office and try to get help to be referred to those nonprofits that we pay them for. There's no cost to you because we're paying through a contract for those agencies. So I'll let you just share that, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Our office is 404-371-2543. I'll go, I talk fast, I'm sorry. 404-371, use 2727. That's the main office for the Community Development Department in Decatur. And so if you need help on those agencies, we can help. I'll go and address the issues that the Commissioner brought up about affordable housing. It kind of goes like this, and that is the most prevalent dynamic we see in affordable housing today is that investors tend to be incentivized to do things. So the incentives today tend to hover around senior housing. And what that means is that developers will, instead of building high-end condos, they can make a considerable amount of money doing affordable housing, but they're paid heavily to do that. So the federal money goes to the state, DCA, Department of Community Affairs, and to various parts of the county for developers that come in and submit applications for affordable housing. And the focus has been senior housing. So in my department, we underwrite and do gap funding for a number of housing projects. The most recent one we have is on Candler Road. We have 171 affordable housing units going up next to the senior center that we built years ago. One building is occupied, and the other building, which has 111 units, will be open fairly soon. That's a project that's subsidized by the federal government. However, it's for seniors, but it's incentivized, the developer is incentivized to build those units. What we aren't seeing in DeKalb are developers, as alluded to by the commissioner, investing their own funds, not being subsidized by the government to build high-end housing. And I think one of the reasons is because of the maybe lack of thrust we have in economic development. So today, most buildings are being constructed to accommodate affordable housing. We've done a number of them recently. Mercy Housing in Chamblee. We did one near the MARTA station in Avondale, 92 units within the last 8 months. We've got a number of projects, but they all tend to be geared around seniors. Now, a lot of us in the room are seniors, so that's not a bad thing that you have affordable housing. But the adage of having non-senior affordable housing has not happened in DeKalb for many years. The other aspect we have is called a rental rehab. We have an ability to fund developers that will petition to our office to provide rental rehab. What is rental rehab? Buford Highway, Panola Road, you have a building that you own that's currently being occupied by someone that's being rented. You like to renovate it. To date, we've not had any developers coming forward to request funds to be able to take advantage of rental rehab, which allows you to stay where you are, but your units get upgraded. Again, it gets back to economic development. So what you see on the horizon is mostly an advent of new senior housing because developers are being paid a lot of money to do that. And that tends to be the projects that have been awarded by the Department of Community Affairs. So that gives you a portrayal of what we've been doing as of late.
To add that, you know, as it relates to rental rehab, we have several programs. Many of you phoned and, you know, being new, I have to learn. You have to figure it out. But the first of the year, we receive applicants from homeowners, from seniors who wish to have their homes rehabbed. And we could do more if we had more people who came to the table. So as much as this is an informative session, this is a cry for us to go into the community, to share information with those who have the ability, because we have everything from our HUD to CDBG funds, 108 revolving loan programs. We need some doers. In some instances, even when it comes to economic development, we have not because we own not. And when it comes to economic development, you cannot force individuals to locate within your community. Because in many instances, when it comes to franchises and small businesses, people locate within their community. So we need to start breeding small business owners and individuals who are willing to come to the table. And on that note, now, do you have anything else, Mr. Mitchell, that you'd like to add?
Yes, I'd like to add that we have a land bank we're working on. It's a possibility to help in economic development. It's going before the commission fairly soon. We currently have small business loan programs. We interviewed at own businesses who would like to augment your current business in DeKalb. We'll lend up to $35,000 for small businesses that apply. You can do that on the portal. There are a lot of large loans we can provide developers. So I encourage developers in the room, or individuals in the room, or business owners to approach us to get funding to help boost economic development.
Absolutely. And when we hear the term land bank, being a former professor, I always like to make sure that everyone understands what we're saying. Now, I personally, for Super 7, as commissioners, we all have access to discretionary funds. And I donated $200,000 of Super District 7's money towards the revitalization of the land bank. Okay? Now, what does that mean? What that means is once we have a land bank, and please, Mr. Mitchell, feel free to correct me. Last time I checked, is there around 280 or is there 320 abated properties in DeKalb County? 300 something. Now, what are abated properties? These are properties because government is in the business of service, providing services to constituents. We are not realtors and we are not in the business of real estate. But when there is a property that is abandoned, what do? We cut the grass, we board the windows, we put a fence around it, and we ensure that it is not a hazard or it doesn't pose a threat to public safety. And that's the most we do. And what happens to you? You get tired of looking at this blight next to your home. So with a land bank, we can put those properties through that land bank. We can cleanse those titles. We can determine if properties need to be compiled or assembled for future development. We can knock it down. And, you know, on the back of a postcard that we gave, we'll have a separate conversation in town hall, and I'm assembling what I call the CCP, the Code Compliance Posse. Now, who's the Code Compliance Posse? That's y'all. Now, what we're going to do is show up because we are waging war. I'm waging war in DeKalb County on businesses and folk that think that it's okay to just own stuff. Now, many of you know, and I'm going to use this as my case study, the Shaker Furniture Complex. They're right off Columbia Drive at the corner of Columbia and Memorial in the Belvedere community. Belvedere is transforming as a community. You have vibrant people in the community. That place has looked as it's looked for as long as anyone in this room can remember. But it's a new day in DeKalb. Our code compliance department, we've given him 11 different citations. He has 30 days to come into compliance. If he does not and doesn't submit to us an acceptable plan to rehab that property, then we're going to knock it down. Now, some of you may wish to join us tomorrow because we're knocking down some stuff tomorrow. But as a, you know, having property, that is, you have to be a responsible landlord or a good steward. So it's time we create some. So with that code compliance posse, we're going to get out and we're going to tell people what the rules are. You can't have more than 10% signage in your window. You a liquor store, we know it. And if you don't take it down, we're going to fine you Because by us just forming and being strict on codes, your community, our community will look totally different. Now, I want to move over because I definitely, Mr. Cromartie, want to hear from you. Because ANDP is dedicated to ensuring affordable housing. And also, next month, I'm not sure the exact date, some of you may be familiar with Operation Hope. But Operation Hope currently owns 280 homes in DeKalb that are affordable housing. We transition folks into becoming home owners if they're not where they need to be. But we will be operating and opening our first Hope Center over in Stonecrest. We will help you with financial dignity, we will assist you with credit, and we will assist you with the resources that are necessary to become homeowners. So now, Mr. Cromartie, I'd like for you to speak to the efforts of ANDP.
Thank you, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. How are you doing? I mean, you guys can fill a room.
Yes, we got something to talk about in
We
here.
can fill a room. Well, I work with the Atlanta Neighborhood Development Partnership, ANDP. We were started in 1991. We're an affordable nonprofit, affordable housing nonprofit, and we do three things. We develop affordable housing. Two, this is for developers out there. We have an ANDP loan fund. We provide capital for people, other people who develop affordable housing so that we can foster more affordable housing for the community. And then three, we have a policy advocacy department that just makes sure that we keep our hand on the pulse of what's happening with all the policies that are going on as it relates to housing. But what's extremely interesting is what we're doing in South DeKalb County. Late last year, we joined with the DeKalb County government and made an announcement that we were going to make an investment in South DeKalb County. Now, that investment entails several things. We will, over the next 3 years, we will acquire, rehab, and resell affordably at least 100 single-family homes. And when I say affordably, I'll explain to you real quick what that means. We do not sell our homes to investors. We do not sell our homes to people who are seeking to purchase a second home. We only sell to owner-occupants that are at low and moderate income levels. And let me explain what that is for DeKalb County. So our percentage is 120% of the area median income and below. So for a family of four in DeKalb County, that would be $95,625. You cannot make above that amount and purchase one of our properties. Above that, we just don't consider it to be an affordable family, and that's not what we were created to do. So we're going to do 100 homes, and our footprint for South DeKalb, if you could just imagine a map for a second, we're going to start in Atlanta, actually, in 30316. That's right there off of Moreland, the DeKalb County part of Atlanta, and we're coming back east, and we're going to go up to Decatur, 30032, and we go up, hit Clarkston, go all the way to Stone Mountain to 124, then we take it down to Ellenwood, Latonia, and then back to Decatur. So that's our area. We're not doing a lot in Doraville. We're not doing anything in Tucker either. So we're focusing the acquisition and building of those homes in that area. Two, that loan fund. I have to find developers. My job is to find ways to move that money out of that loan fund and get it in the hands of people that are ready to develop some housing. And we have very affordable terms. So if you or you know anybody that is a developer, reach out to us. We'll be having an event over the next couple of weeks, next couple of months actually, to promote that loan fund because it's really important. We can't do all the affordable housing that's necessary. And three, we just want to improve the health, wellness, and just overall quality of life for everybody in this room. We're a small Thank you. We're a small nonprofit. We probably have 15 people. So we can't really do a lot of capacity as it relates to that. And we're a housing nonprofit. So if we're talking about improving the quality of life, it has to be about more than housing, right? We're talking about health. We just signed a deal with the YMCA of Metropolitan Atlanta so that for each family that purchases one of those 100 homes, we're going to give them a free annual membership to the YMCA. We're working with 3 Ys, yes. We're working with 3 Ys, the one at Wade Walker, we're working the one at South DeKalb, and the one at East Lake. How many are familiar with those YMCAs? All right, so that's one thing that we're doing. So we also are very conscious about safety. So what can we do to help promote safety as a housing nonprofit? You know, we're not the police, but I know them. And we are implementing a program where if a police officer or anybody in the safety department for DeKalb County purchases one of those 100 homes, we're going to give them a $7,500 incentive for purchasing one of those homes to help keep us safe. So these are we just started this 3-year initiative in January, so we're brand new at it. We're still figuring it out as we go. And because, as I said before, we have partnership in our name, we know we can't do it all, but we're about forming partnerships, and we recently formed an advisory council, and some of the people on this diocese are on the advisory council for South DeKalb. 60 people, diverse organizations. We have HUD, we have DeKalb County government, we have real estate professionals. We're trying to figure out how we can make it better, and through partnership, I think we can. Did I address everything?
You did good.
Okay.
And
all right, thank you.
And let me say to you, I hope that you hear again and again the cry from each of us is that there are opportunities there, and in many instances we need people to come to the table. But I do believe that there's a disconnect between information and knowledge and what resources are, and that's where we come in. One thing you said when you talked about crime, that's a great segue on over into the next thing that you all have been calling the office about. Around June, mid-year, I think that the news hit. Channel 2 did a report that talked about homicides in DeKalb County. Now, let me begin, because I always like to put the truth out there. In DeKalb County, crime overall is down 30%. What is up is homicides and violent crime. And currently, I'm not proud to stand here and say it, but we are the homicide capital. I think about 2 years ago, we surpassed Fulton County. And back in June, we already had 60 homicides. And last year, if I'm correct, we finished with 84. So we were on target, unless we change, to have a record year. Now, when you call the office and you say, now, Lorraine, what you gonna do about folks killing each other in DeKalb? I came to ask, what are we going to do? I cannot issue a moratorium against homicides and crime. What we're dealing with is, unfortunately, a community of folk who don't value life. That starts at home. So what we've got to do is more education, and we have to have more respect for each other, and we've got to be a little more, I think, discipline-oriented with young folk. Okay? But one of the things that I'd like us to have this conversation, and I'd like for Chief Paddock as well as Chief Catlin to join in, because this is very serious. You know, I stand before you as your commissioner, and I've had a car stolen from my home, and in 1 week, both me and my daughter were rear-ended and they drove off. Now, the first time it happened to me, and so what I'm saying to you is, I understand what you say, but how do we form community policing units? What is it we can do to assist you? And I want you to also understand, when it comes to homicides, that's very personal. Usually they get who they went for. It is highly unlikely, less than 2% of us will ever be affected in this room by homicide unless we're the victim of a stray bullet. But it's still a very real thing that we see on the news every night. So please, feel free to let's have this conversation.
Yes, ma'am. One of the first things I want to talk about is our homicides and assaults. You're correct that those are up this year. One of the things the department is doing is started a new initiative called HALT. It's Homicide Assaults Location Targeting. And what is the premise behind the HALT initiative is a community partnership not with just the police and the community, but with the DA's office, public defender's office, juvenile courts. But homicide and assault location targeting focuses on specific locations and criminal data that we've gathered to identify our target hotspots and identify those people that are in those hotspots to start tracking and going after those violent offenders. It's going to take rapid prosecution. It takes community involvement, getting with the community, ensuring that these people, when they go to court, they're being held accountable by the judges in the court system. And as far as what's going on within the community, we do a lot of partnerships, and what can we do better is get more people at our community meetings. We post those on our Facebook pages, on our Nextdoor apps. We see the same people. We'd love to see more people. We do monthly clergy meetings with the clergy in the various precincts. We want to bridge that gap and continue with a community effort because it is a dual partnership in order to police our community.
And Chief Catlin, would you like to make any comment concerning efforts that are taking place within the community as well?
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate it. So as Commissioner mentioned, homicides is a big problem for us right now. One of the biggest issues that we're seeing with homicides are domestic violence. There's about 10% of our homicides right now. We've had about 81 this year that are domestic violence related. And what I want to say about that is when there's an issue of domestic violence, we need you guys to say something. We have lots of resources that we can offer you. Our goal is not to put individuals in jail, but our goal is to try to rebuild those families so that we can reduce those crimes. And as far as the homicides are concerned in general, there's no way to predict the homicide. You know, we try to predict crime, but homicides, we cannot predict them. But we're also working with the John Jay College to bring a group violence initiative to DeKalb County. And that initiative is going to allow us to work along with all of our stakeholders, like Chief Patrick said, the District Attorney's Office, the U.S. Attorney's Office, Juvenile Court. We're going to bring all those people together so we can work on this initiative so we can get these shooters, these groups that are causing all the problems in our communities off the streets. But I want to say this before I end. This is just not a police problem. It's a us problem. It's a we problem. We got to work together to build relationships. Like Chief Patrick also mentioned, we have a lot of things like Coffee with a Cop. Come out so you can meet your officers and let the officers meet you. Additionally, we have Citizens Academy. I'm not sure if anybody out there has ever gone to our Citizens Academy. You will love it. The Citizens Academy gives you an opportunity to really get to know the police officers, to get to know our processes and how we fight crime, to get to know all of the other entities around the department that can give you resources and to assist you with any type of issue that you have in your community. But if you ever see something, say something. That's one of the biggest things, issues I have with in the Criminal Investigation Division is getting citizens to come forward to talk about the issues in their community. I know a lot of people are afraid, they don't want to come forward. Excuse me, they don't want to come forward, but please come forward. If you don't want to come forward and provide information, someone has always seen something. If you don't want to come forward, what you can do is you can call Crime Stopper. Crime Stopper's number, I'm going to give it to you, is 404-577-8477. So if you don't want to come forward, call Crime Stoppers, provide that information to Crime Stoppers, and Crime Stoppers will provide that information to us so we can help reduce the crime in DeKalb County and make it a safer place to live.
Yes. I'd like to thank both of you for those comments. And also I'd like to say, as you all came in, we had you register. For those of you who may not be receiving our newsletter, but we will have information on the Citizens Academy, because in many instances, when you get out there on the front line, you see things a lot differently once you've had that experience. So we will ensure that we have that, as well as Neighborhood Watch, because criminals and crooks and robbers and thieves, they pay attention. They watch very carefully. So that is one of our first lines of defense. So even when I go into HOAs and visit homeowners associations, we have those discussions. At this point, because I want to make sure we cover all the topics, I'm going to move on over towards infrastructure and traffic. As it relates to infrastructure, I'm very proud to have someone with us here today from DOT who can talk to us about the $300 million DOT interchange project that's taking place, because this is going to have a significant effect on DeKalb County, as well as economic development.
Hello, my name
yes.
is Kimberly Nesbitt. Thank you for having me. In reference to the interchange that your councilwoman is referring to, we do, as she said, studies that anticipate traffic growth for up to 20, 40 years. And from the patterns we've seen, it's not going to slow down. We have urban sprawl. So in that effort, we are trying to ensure that people have the ability to get to and from work and to be able to get from to and from play. So this interchange project actually is in its first phase of study. Our board, our initiative was by our board passed that as it relates to interstates and highways, we would not do any what we call new general purpose lanes. Those are lanes that are free access lanes. All new lanes are what we call managed lanes. Those are the lanes that you've seen up northwest corridor. We've also looking at studies for the downtown connector. So based off of that, we know that DeKalb County is going to continue to grow. A lot of times we're behind the curve, and that's the hard part, is trying to be ahead of the development. We're trying to partner with DeKalb County and other local governments to ensure that when they approve site plans, they communicate with us and, of course, with the county traffic planners and engineers so we can have the infrastructure in place that will be able to support the traffic that is going to come on those roads. And I will tell you, sometimes it doesn't seem like the right hand and the left hand are talking. So for the Metro Atlanta area, we have the Atlanta Regional Commission who does the modeling and traffic studies for the Metro Atlanta area. And GDOT, we actually partner with them with those studies to put funds and money on projects that will either be equated to capacity, safety, operations, and even what we call intersection improvement projects. That is to ensure that when, like we're saying now, we have 285. Our 285 corridor is completely saturated. If any of you, I will tell you, I've lived in DeKalb County for 20 years. I lived on Panola Road for 3 years. I've been here. I live in Tucker now. I am quite aware that there's nowhere to put these trucks. And when we tried to look at a outside ring, of course, that was very impactful to communities because it would have caused displacement. So what we're looking at doing is trying to build a smarter infrastructure. And that means that we're looking at, even if you have a managed lane, I've had communities say to me, because I actually was the project manager for the hot lane, the first managed lane up 85 that was opened 4 years ago. And we had people who were low income said, why should I have to pay to be in a lane I've already paid for? And I totally understood where they were coming from. And we told them we had done the studies that showed that hot lane was underutilized. And therefore, if we made these managed lanes, people who needed to get to a daycare in 15 minutes would pay that optimization fee to get in it. And those people who got into that lane got out of the general purpose lane. So that meant that the general purpose lane that most people were in, the level of service or the speed of which the people traveled would actually improve, and it did. So we were able to show that it was a net benefit to the whole community. We are also working with Greta and MARTA. Greta, we're working on our park and rides. We're installing those to try to get more people into those and get them out of cars, get them into buses, and therefore there's less vehicles on the road. We are also working with MARTA on their expansion plans to ensure that when we have these bus to trains and what we call other modes of transportation, the people are able to move seamlessly through the community, because it is essential if you need a quality of life in any area, and especially the DeKalb County area, transportation is number one, whether you walk, bike, ride, or you get on a bus. So with that being said, I work very closely with Dave Pelton in DeKalb County and Patrice Creeder. I've known them for 20 years. We have worked with them on everything from signal upgrades to the Panola Road corridor. So if you go out here, we have the operational improvement goes down to Covington Highway. We have the interchange project. We're actually looking at a diversion diamond interchange at Panola Road to improve that traffic, because people who need to make a left turn off of it to get onto 20 or to get off, it backs up on the interstate, it backs up on Panola Road. So we do understand that that could be impactful to property owners who are adjacent to that. And we also, in our department, have an Office of Right-of-Way where we work with property owners on assessing fair market value for any right-of-way we have to buy or is needed in order to improve the roads and to deliver projects to the citizens of Georgia. And with that being said, we also work with several of these other groups to try to get that information in and anticipate future and current development.
And I'd also like to at this time, because there's a lot to talk about here. Many of you are aware that we are under a consent decree where DeKalb County is actively exchanging, enlarging, and replacing our pipes for water flow. I don't think sometimes folk understand what massive impact that has on economic development. Because if you do not have water capacity, in many instances you can't recruit certain types of industry. So this is an ongoing project, and I'd like Mr. Reinhardt to speak to that. But also I have to talk about SPLOST, because we get the calls, the potholes, you drive down the road, look in the rearview mirror and the road deteriorated. Well, let me tell you, this has been a long time coming. We only passed SPLOST by referendum in 2017. So we just completed our first full cycle of SPLOST dollars, which allowed us to pave 100 miles of road. Now, when you look around us at our counterparts, Gwinnett, Fulton, these are counties that have had SPLOST in place for decades. So, again, I stand before you 8 months into this position. Often I find myself saying, how did we get here? But these are things that for us now are new. So in many instances, we have some roads that haven't been resurfaced in 15 years and longer. I want each of you here, because I like to deal in truth. I'll tell you what I know as it is. The average cost to pave a mile of highway is $425,000. So I need you to understand that we're working fast, but the one thing that I can say is that with SPLOST, we now grade every road in DeKalb. When you call me and say, my road is bad, then I go to the list, because there is a pecking order, a hierarchy, based on the condition. And that being said, we're working as fast as we can with what we have. But I hear you loud and clear as it relates to materials. So Mr. Reinhardt, if you would speak to our capital improvement plan, the EPA, and where we are.
Yes, thanks, Commissioner. Many of you are very familiar with the efforts the county has been making since 2011 to make some significant investments in our sewer collection system, both to meet the requirements of the U.S. EPA to prevent sewer overflows from occurring, and to rehabilitate the system and improve it where necessary for economic development, for new capacity. Because we can't allow new connections to a pipe that's overflowing, nor, of course, do we want to spend money expanding a system if we're not also going to be able to keep up with the maintenance. So way back then in 2011, the CEO and the Board of Commissioners at that time approved a $1.345 billion capital improvements program. And it got off to a bit of a slow start, a lot of drama and other things some of you are familiar with. But now at this point, in the last couple of years, it is now up to the level where it's supposed to be and really where it needs to stay. So the way I like to describe it is, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon, right? So we're finally at the pace of activity that we need to be at. It's a $200 million a year program, about half of which is sewer system related. There are improvements to the snap finger treatment plant. That's part of the program. It too got off to a slow start, but is now about halfway through completion in a couple more years. All of these things take a lot of planning. They're expensive, but they all have to be done well if we're both going to have a system that functions in compliance without overflows and also allows new connections and new capacity and growth so that you can have a balanced infrastructure, both in good condition for those of you who already live here and able to accept new business and new opportunity. So we've got to stay at that pace. We've got some more debt to issue and more funds to raise and continue to work hard on it. But you should see out in the community people working on lift stations, lining pipes, rehabilitating pipes. We got $100 million of that work, like I said, last year. We've got another $100 million approved for this year. And then we'll just need to stay at that pace and everybody stay vigilant. And then the commissioner mentioned SPLOST, and the engineers for all those efforts are all coordinating those efforts. So the lady from Georgia DOT mentioned the coordination they do. Our water and sewer staff coordinate with the 12 cities, with the Georgia DOT, and to make sure that whether we're resurfacing a street or replacing a water main or rehabilitating a sewer, that it's all well planned and coordinated, and that we get more and more community input like this so that the commissioner's aware of your priorities, and then she can help us understand these sidewalks were appreciated, this is the next gap. Or these water mains were breaking and we got them fixed, now where's your next priority? And then that feedback helps us to start to think out for the next 5 years and the next 10 years, now that we're about halfway through that program that we originally started on back in 2011. Thank you.
And thank you so much for that. I know that over in Rockbridge Road, over near South Deshawn, over near my Water's Edge community, that for the longest time, that road was a mess, okay? And what happened there, now we can clap because it's done, but what happened is, as Mr. Reinhardt said, it takes a lot of coordination because those pipes had to be replaced as well. So it does you no good to resurface the road when you needed to go even deeper. So from an engineering perspective, what we're dealing with is a lot. Sometimes before you go forward, you have to go back. And Mr. Pete Walker, we didn't let you off the hook here because you're very important to this conversation. When I went around the room and literally did the introductions, I spoke of Mr. Walker and him being the president and CEO of the Housing Development Corporation here in DeKalb, with 1,500 units of affordable housing and 6,200 housing choice vouchers. And I would like for you to talk about the current state of the program, what is in place, and how folks that are sitting out here who may be in need of affordable housing can go through your office to receive the assistance that they may need.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
And hello, everyone. Hope you're having a great evening. We have a daunting task, as we know. That's what we've been talking about. We have over 300,000 housing units in DeKalb County, households in DeKalb County. Of those 300,000, 140,000 are rental. Can you hear me a little? You can hear me now? I said we have 300,000 units of households in DeKalb County, and of that, about 140,000 are rental households. We have 6,200 vouchers. So you can see, from a voucher standpoint, we're not going to make that much of an impact. But we're doing the best we can every day in trying to make sure that we work through our wait list and all that. But one of the other things that we're working on that's really important, you mentioned earlier that there's a need for 3,200 units of affordable housing at least every year. Right now, we have over 1,000 units that are in process right now, today. So we're working on that diligently. In addition to that, we currently, as the commissioner indicated, we own 1,500 plus units. And we're trying to partner with developers throughout the county to produce new affordable units all over. The challenge that we have is that most of the units that are currently available, a lot of the affordable units are substandard. They're just not up to par. A lot of the units aren't. But if we went in and tried to acquire and rehabilitate them, they just don't work financially. When we talked about how can we create affordable units, you can do it two ways. You can build new construction, or you can build, you can acquire and rehab. When we start talking about trying to hit a number of $800 a unit, something that is somewhat affordable, it's almost impossible to do that with the current cost structure. You see a lot of development today. You do see a lot of development. You see the apartment complexes that they're building throughout Decatur, where they have the parking deck in the middle, then they wrap around. But all those apartments are $2,000 a month and above. You just can't even touch them. So what we're trying to do is, so the question is, how do you create affordable housing units? And the best way, I've been doing this since 1989. I've been doing this a long time. And the way that it's been working is through tax-exempt bond financing along with tax credits. Okay, so one thing we can do as a community is really support the tax credit program, because the tax credit program allows additional subsidy to come in. When we're talking about, when Alan and those guys are talking about, Alan and Michael are talking about subsidy. Oh, you can't, can you? Hello? Okay, can you hear better now? Okay. Did you hear anything I was saying before? No? I'm sorry. Okay, so at the end of the day, can you, now I can hear the background. You can hear me. Okay. So the tax credit, as I was mentioning earlier, the tax credit program is what really is something that's helping us out immensely. We do tax-exempt bonds along with tax credits. That is the crux of how we're able to do the 1,000 units that we are able to build right now. And what I would ask people to do is continue to advocate for the expansion of the tax credit program, because it started back in the 80s. And it basically, we have a $20 million development, and tax credits can raise up to $14, $15 million. And it allows us to do affordable, we can get the rents down in the range that they need to be in. One of the problems with that is there are very limited resources when it comes to that. For example, your normal tax credit transaction, it only has 80 to 100 units, and maybe we do 2 a year in DeKalb County. We're only allotted 2 a year in DeKalb County. So with a 9% tax credit program, we only get a chance to do maybe 160 units a year, and that's partnering with other developers as well. So we have a daunting task, but I think that if we all continue to work together, then we'll be able to try to make a dent in this huge problem that we have. Some of the other statistics that I can kind of quote are when we, HUD, with Michael German, when I talked with Sean Donovan years ago, who was the head of HUD at the time, HUD was investing about $3 billion a year into infrastructure improvements and public housing and other types of housing. And the need was over $30 billion a year. So it was only a very small portion that they were able to address. So we have been able to transition to what's called the Rental Assistance Demonstration Program, where we're able to leverage some of those that $3 billion that we do get into more money. And when I say $3 billion, I'm talking about in the whole country. So that means we get a very small portion of that. So, but we've been able to leverage that, and we're making a much bigger dent than we used to. We used to have 200 units of public housing, and now we're producing over 500 units of affordable housing on an annual basis, and we're very proud of that. We're going to continue to try to do that. And I wish that there was an answer to how you can access other than getting on a wait list, okay? Because the wait list moved very slowly. We had over 60,000 people on our wait list. 60,000 people apply for the wait list. One thing we do is make the people that currently live in the county have a priority. And currently, that list is not as large as the 60,000. So we encourage everyone to continue to fight the good fight as far as the housing goes. We're going to continue to do as much as we can in getting in making these transactions work. Like I mentioned before, they don't work because private equity does not come into these transactions. And I know I can be very technical, but it requires us to be very technical in order to get into how to make this housing work. It's very technical, and if they don't get their returns, then they're not going to invest. And that's a problem that we have in DeKalb County, is that the returns are not high enough. So we have to depend on subsidy. And so we're going to have to hope that social equity grows. We're going to have to encourage the large foundations to put billions of dollars and only require less than 5% returns. That's how we can also supplement some of the housing opportunities that we have. So hopefully that addressed some of your questions.
It did, and let me also say, when we talk about those subsidies, just yesterday I sat with some of my colleagues because I sit on PECS, the PECS committee, and of course we focus on economic development. And we were looking at incentives. Incentives can be everything from tax abatements, where we say in exchange for you coming into this county, we will abate your taxes. You owe us no taxes for 5 years. It can be everything from loans. The 108 revolving loan program will issue a small business loans from 1% to 3%. You can't get that at a bank. So the incentives are there. And this is a far deeper conversation, because we've got to figure it out, because almost like when it comes to the medical field, the benefit is not in the cure, it's in the treatment. So you don't have people that are rushing to develop certain types of projects because it's about economics. But we're in the people business. So we have to figure this out. This actually segments very well today. I don't know if you all are aware, but in Tucker, right there off Stone Memorial Drive, lower in Stone Mountain, Lithonia, we opened a 100,000 square foot underpriced furniture building. And for us, this is a huge acquisition in the county. Because again, in the next 3 to 5 years, you all are going to see a lot of changes in DeKalb. Because where Fulton and many other counties are saturated, we are rich in land. But it is going to be a process, because we're dealing with infrastructure and a lot of moving parts. But I just want to say to you, don't go anywhere. If you sell your home, make sure you deal with Miss Sandy Johnson. You deal with a credible agent, rather than these people that are sending photos of your house saying, I want to buy your home, cash 15 days, I will handle your relocation. Be careful with whom you choose to do business. Now, as it relates to business survival, Mr. Baker, I know that that is your area, and I would like you to speak specifically to the programs that DeKalb County has to help small business owners. I think this is important, because I don't know how many, do you all realize that 99.7% of businesses in America are classified as small businesses? America is not built off your Fortune 500 companies. The average small business has no more than 20 employees. So I want to see our small businesses thrive. So let's talk about those resources.
Good evening. I'm Andrew Baker. I'm the director for the Planning and Sustainability Department. And definitely, one of the things we need to do is to look at our commercial redevelopment corridors, and we encourage you to invest in the businesses and the locations within the urban part of this county. One of the things that is under my umbrella is actually business license. So one of the things I'd like for you to do, if you're considering going into business, that you make sure you come down and you have a conversation with the people in our department. A little closer, okay? Because if you go about business, a lot of times you'll see that there may be a business operating there, but it doesn't mean that if they've been closed, you can go into that spot and do that same kind of business. Some of the businesses are grandfathered, and so they're able to do that particular business, but a new person coming in after it has ceased operation would no longer be allowed to do that type of business. We have zoning laws in place that tells you what you can do, where you can do it. It has all kind of requirements in terms of parking requirements, stormwater runoff requirements. If you're doing a restaurant, you might have to have a grease trap, which means you have to deal with Ted and his group on the sanitary sewers issues. You have to get a health permit from the health department. There's a lot of rules and regulations that you have to comply with. So before you go out and buy that property, I suggest you come in, have a conversation with us about the zoning that's in place, the parking requirements, all the regulations, and then work with us dealing with the business licenses as well. Our department works closely with economic development, or DeKalb. There's a lot of programs that they have that they're making available, as well as community development on micro loans and so forth. So all of us working together can assist you in establishing your businesses within our communities. A lot of times we hear a lot about why is such and such happening in one part of town and it's not happening in ours. I encourage you to come and have a conversation with our office and the others so that we can start making things happen in South DeKalb.
Absolutely. And let me say that every Friday for about a month now that I feel I stand on solid ground and it doesn't shake, and I understand my role better, JP and we get out and we go in the community. And we stop into small businesses, and we have information on ACE, small business loans. So we've done Stone Mountain, City of Stone Mountain, we've done the City of Lithonia, and you can look for us to be walking on Friday up and down Memorial Drive and all these other streets, because that's what it takes. Sometimes you have to go to people. You have to take, or shall I say, meet folk where they are. Now, at this time, I want to open the floor for discussion, because I know that there may be some amongst us that have questions. So if you will just report to a microphone, we would like to take your questions at this time.
I'm the president of the Hidden Hills Civic Association. We represent 1,640 homes in our community. And from the very beginning, when our community was birthed, it was a voluntary community. Now it is a mandatory. So Mr. Patterson, would you please tell all your realtors, all 16,000 of them, that we are a mandatory community with mandatory dues, all right? Because realtors always come to us and ask that question. I don't understand why they don't already know that, okay? The second thing I want to say is that it's concerning HUD, Mr. German. HUD, you're HUD, right? Okay, HUD. Please, you need to come inspect homes in our property, in our community. We have 2 HUD homes that haven't been occupied in the last 12 years. So something's wrong if they've been in our community and haven't seen these vacant houses that we have spent money to board up and protect in their HUD homes. So something's disconnected in our community. So please, you can talk with me afterwards. I'll be glad to share with you what that is. And then the last question I have has to do with investment properties. What we have found in our community is just like you have said, that we have 1,640 homes, and 8% of our homes are owned by people who don't live in the community, but they are investments. You can go down the list: Invitation Homes, Pager Homes, Tricon Homes. If you go to DeKalb's website, their parcel website, and you put in Tricon Homes, I saw at least 200 homes owned just by that one investor. That's across all of DeKalb County. So something is wrong with that picture. Because what happens is those are renters in that community, in those houses, not owners. And that's the problem that we're facing in our community. So we need help with understanding that they might be getting investment, but we're definitely not getting the benefits. All right? So y'all need to help us with that. And the third thing I want to say is that if anybody want to buy my home, I'll sell it for $850,000. They can come get it. But I guarantee you they won't pay that for it because they're going to tell me it's overpriced. So you need to go down there and get somebody else that you can steal their home from because that's what's happening. They're stealing people's homes. And we got to find a way to price them out of the market. And that's what I recommend to my residents. Everybody sell a home for $850,000, and I bet you they won't sell any in them.
Thank you, Mr. Frierson. And because I know you and I know you know me and we communicate, send me those addresses and I will make sure that Mr. German receives them. You're welcome.
Those are just comments, no answers, okay.
Well, I'm delighted to see everybody up here. My name is Jacqueline Hammonds, and everybody up here can help me with all the problems I'm having. Now, the first problem I'm having, and I need to know how to go by handling things, I need your assistance with this, it has to do with these Section 8 rental people and the owners. DeKalb County isn't doing anything about anything but telling you you need to, all your stuff is a civil matter. Now, all my stuff cannot just be a civil matter, but they don't even want to tell you how to go about taking care of a civil matter or get started with it. So now, I've been in my house that I purchased as a young adult at the age of 22 under the HUD program. And I've been there for 48 years, and I've been trying to improve that house. But this, some people from your Section 8 program, the owners of these Section 8 houses, and one in particular that I live in between. I have been over 20-something years having problem with this particular person. But it's just, and she have included the whole neighborhood. So I'm always told I got to get proof of stuff. In the time that I've been in that house, I've put floodlights in my backyard. I have put cameras up, and the police always have something to say about what else I need to do to help the situation. So now I heard on the television news that you all were going to get cameras in, and you were going to post them in certain areas. I'm begging for help for at least one of them to be posted in my area where my house is, because I cannot afford anymore. And housing authority said they could help me, but the police didn't want to do their part. So now I have been threatened, and I have been threatened here recently. They have been coming on my property and destroying my property. I have not complained because I had been told about one of your police officers, I don't think he's any longer here, not to call the South Precinct anymore. Don't call the South Precinct anymore. And don't come over there. Now, so far things have calmed down a little bit, but the traffic, they're coming on my property, stealing and destroying my property. I need some help with that, and I cannot afford a lawyer. I cannot and don't want to be thrown out like that. Some serious things need to be done, or some serious laws need to be done with these Section 8 people and the homeowners that's renting this property out.
Well, let me say this to you. I think anyone that has called our office has found that we are responsive. I actually report to work 5 days a week, because even when I'm in the field on Friday, that's work. You, CJP Phillips, let's take your information, and this is a conversation that we need to have one-on-one so that I can understand and we can see what needs to be done and what has been done.
Nothing. And you need to have some laws to make it easy to be able to deal with the Section 8 people that is renting their property. And that property needs to be kept up. They need to do everything that everybody else is expected to do.
And let me say this to everyone in here as it relates to code compliance, because some of what I'm hearing from you, although we haven't gone there yet one-on-one, is issues of code compliance. What I'm dealing with right now over at the Shaker Furniture Strip Mall, you have to know the right people to call. Now, code compliance, and this is not the code compliance meeting, and I purposely didn't have them come. You show up September 19th, and we're going to do that then.
I'll be there.
But code compliance in DeKalb County is not proactive, it is responsive. They will pass 15 codes, but they do not stop. They only respond to what you tell them. So it's important in DeKalb, if you see something, you have to say something and go about reporting it. So let's make sure that we understand that. Now, I don't like the system either, but we're working within the confines of what we have. So I will work with you on that, so that if that's the issue, we can get someone out there and cite people to bring them into compliance. Okay? Yes, sir.
We have one question from a lady here that can't move over to the microphone. Here you go.
Thank you very much for this assistance. I could not walk over there. My name is Angela Patrick. I've been in DeKalb County all of my adult life. Commissioner Johnson, I'm very proud of what you're doing this evening. It's a very informative meeting. I could ask 50 questions, but I won't. To Brother Muhammad, when you talked about the assault rifle, I have a cousin, 22 years old, that went to a pawn shop and bought an assault rifle. So they can get these, you can get the assault rifles, you know, and then coming in. We've been told 90,000 gang members have been identified in Georgia. A lot of them are coming through DeKalb County. 20 years ago, when we talked about gangs, people in DeKalb didn't want to acknowledge that, but we do have that presence. So to the police presence that's represented today, I want to know if there's an effort to put more tag readers in our community, more cameras, and I'm very concerned about the slider crimes when they happen over and over and over again. I know you all can't be everywhere, but it seems like you could catch more of them to me. You know, seems like you can catch more of them to me. Okay, so that's one question. The other question is about seniors. The word affordable housing is spin. To seniors, affordable housing does not mean $1,300 and $1,350 a month. Affordable housing to seniors means $500, $600, $700. That's what they're used to. So we need to change that terminology or spend more time explaining about affordable housing. Affordable housing is not $500, $600, $700 a month. And we seem to have a spin going on with 55 and older, and they seem to be taking advantage of the senior issue with that. So those two questions, I'll start right there to give other people a chance to ask questions.
So, Ms. Patrick, first I'll answer your question regarding the gang and also the camera. So we are working diligently to put tag readers throughout the county in strategic places. So that's coming. We're working on that diligently, so be patient with us. To the gang problem, we have a very good gang unit. These guys are very proactive. They get out in the community. They teach a great program. They get out and they work with all of the precincts to fight the crime in their particular area when it comes to gangs. We work with other agencies as well, because we have one of the largest gang units within the other agencies around the DeKalb County area. So we work together to fight the gang problems. And anytime you have an issue with gangs, if you will call us, call a non-emergency number for DeKalb County, or you can call our gang unit We have a number for the gang unit. If you would like that, I can get it to you after we leave. I do. I will get you one. But you can give us a call, and we will attack your problem the best we can, okay? And the other issue that you have, I'm going to pass that on. Affordable housing.
Yes, you ask a very valid question about affordable housing for seniors, and I agree with you that that is the range that is affordable to seniors. As we indicated before, the problem is the amount of subsidy that is available. So what we're trying to do is put as much subsidy in these various housing opportunities as we can. And one of the things that would help, and we're petitioning HUD to allow us to do that, would be for us to be able to project base more of our developments, and then that would allow seniors to spend no more than 30% of their income, and that would get it down into that range. So that's one of the things that we're trying to petition them to do. Right now, we can only set aside 20% of our allocation to do that, and by allowing us to go up to maybe 50%, that would allow more opportunities for seniors. I understand what you're saying, and I think that affordable housing, I agree with you. I think no more than 30% of the income is what is truly affordable.
Okay, and I know we need to be out of here by 8:30. I always want to be as respectful as possible. Go ahead and let's try to get these in.
I'll be brief.
Yes, sir.
I can answer Jocelyn O'Neill's question real quick about I can answer Jocelyn O'Neill's question about the 500 homes, imitation homes. They've got Wall Street money behind them. They went in and bought millions of houses over the United States in the 2008 during the downturn. And recently from the federal government, Freddie Mac gave them a $10 billion, not $10 million, a $10 billion loan to finance the rest of their houses. So that's why you see somebody in Atlanta that has 500 homes. And I say that because I'm the missing middle. We talk about affordable housing, we talk about big housing. I quit my job about 3 years ago to go into business for myself, and I build homes. I renovate them, I rent them out, but when you walk by my house, you will not know it's a rental house. But we've been trying to grow, and this is a question for Mr. Reinhardt. I wanted you to read a part of a sentence I got from Zach Williams. It said, and this is about the sewer capacity. I can't build a house. They said I can build a house, but I can't get the sewer connection. And here was one of the responses I got. It was, we don't know when that property will be fixed because we're still doing preliminary engineering, and so we don't have any idea. So you say that the sewer system, which actually affects South DeKalb and affects the development in South DeKalb, if you guys don't even know when you're going to be doing certain properties or when the completion date is, if you're talking about $2 billion worth of projects, it would seem you would have a completion date, a start date, or at least an estimated time. This is in the Fowler Creek area, and they don't even know when they're going to start, when it's going to be finished. Can you address that?
And I remember meeting you at an event.
We met several. I was actually the one that on next door started the Shaker Furniture, and some of the neighbors got in, and we probably sent you about 15 emails, so I appreciate you getting behind that and getting it done.
And Zach was exactly right. Out of those 2,600 miles of sewer pipes, there's roughly 200 of them that are in the consent decree program for assessment and then engineering and different levels of rehabilitation based either on the condition or based on the capacity, whether they're overflowing. So in some of those areas like Shoal Creek or near the Snapfinger plant, where some of the pipes are overflowing, they have to first do enough flow monitoring and testing and modeling that then they can determine what's the permanent fix. Sometimes it can be as much as $10 or $20 million on a segment of pipe, before they can prove to the EPA the overflows are under control. So you're exactly right. That's been the hardest thing for realtors, home builders, single-family home builders, countywide to understand, is why a project the size of State Farm might sail through. That's Nancy Creek Tunnel, lots of capacity. Or one over near the Pole Bridge plant in Stonecrest Mall area might sail through. That's because Pole Bridge plant has a lot of major lift stations and plant capacity for lots of new connections immediately. But we have parts of our system, especially some of the older parts, Decatur, Avondale Estates, or Snapfinger, where certain pipe segments are fine, but certain ones are overflowing, and until they're fixed, the EPA won't allow us new connections. So that $100 million a year investment I was talking about, that pace we have to stay at for the next 5 years, it can't happen everywhere all at the same time. Thus, you're exactly right. There's unfortunate people caught like you. Some have been caught since 2017 because their specific site needs a major project versus others that may just be a minor project or some simple cleaning of a system. So it's a complex problem, and you're right. In the meantime, we have some kind of innocent bystanders, I would call it, that until all of those major fixes are done, are going to be stuck for a little while.
And I will say that I understand your frustration because I came in that new person and I'm ready to go. And then I got the memo that, Lorraine, you need to hold on a minute. You know, you're out there and you're calling because I have an economic development tour coming up on September 19th where I'm putting them in sprinters and we're visiting 19 locations across South and unincorporated DeKalb. But I had to be very cautious because I had to ensure what the water and sewer capacity is. Because we just can't do everything that we want right now. And I have to be honest. There's no reason for me to say it any other way. So you seem to be a casualty of what I would like to call progress. But we'll continue that conversation. There's nothing here to lie about. It is what it is. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Linda Williams. I am a commercial realtor as well as a member of the DeKalb Association of Realtors. But my comment is and I need them not to panic. Thank you. My concern is for the youth and the amount of crime and violence that's occurring in the community, and that is a direct result of our young people not having opportunities in terms of education, training. We have to engage our youth, and not all crime is going to be resolved as a result of that. But we have many people here, retired and otherwise, that have many talents that they can contribute training. We talk about you want to develop our community. We can provide training for young men to learn various skills and develop that way. And that is going to decrease our crime, our homicide. We sit around and we complain more than anything. Each year, I go to Stevenson High School, various high schools in the area, and I speak to the young people about career opportunities, about positioning themselves for success. And when I come, they all listen because I have two sons that graduated from DeKalb County. My youngest son is a doctor and my oldest son is an engineer, and it's because of parental engagement and our belief in them. So when we stop talking about what these children are doing and become more engaged and providing opportunities for them, we're going to see a greater result.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Peggy Benson, and I would like to thank each of you all and the commissioner for this opportunity. I think my question is for Ms. Kim. I didn't get your last name.
Ms. Nesbitt. Fine, go ahead with your question.
Ms. Kim, one evening I came home off Covington Highway and I saw your map, but I did not see Covington Highway, Young Road on your map. 8 trees was cut down in our subdivision in the median. Now this is like coming into my front door of my own home. Those trees are very personal to us. I'm speaking for the Hidden Creek subdivision. Covington Highway and Hidden Drive is on one side, Young Road is on the other side. Nobody gave us notification that the trees were being cut down. Nobody has given us the status of what's going. It's a very ugly eyesore. So I'd like to know what is going to be done. Why did they come into the community and cut down 8 trees? I see the work along Covington Highway, and that could be done. But to come up into our personal space, I don't understand that. And we would like resolution. Thank you.
Okay, when you say these trees that were cut down, were they within the state right-of-way or inside the homeowners association or the private property owner's property?
The median, when you come up, it's in the median. These are the trees in the median.
Okay. I know, so as it relates to how we ordinance landscaping within in a highway or a road, we do what we call studies, where you have to have sight line, where if a person is on that road and they need to make a left, they have no obstructions to do that successfully without having another car run into them. Or in a situation where we have clear zone, where that means if somebody were to leave the road, we give them, based on the speed design, enough time to be able to recover and get off the road. And the tree is considered an obstruction to a person being able to recover and do that. There are instances where there are trees that have been planted within the right-of-way that we are not aware of, and people did not get a permit to do it. So as soon as we find out, because we are responsible for the safety of drivers, we have to take them out. Now, I will tell you this, if you have and this relates to state highways, U.S. routes, I'm not talking about DeKalb County, we have partnered with DeKalb County on landscaping that meets our required ordinances, in that the tree can only be a certain diameter, it can only be a certain height, and so far from the road. And they have joined with us for mowing and maintenance agreements to do that. So there are instances, ma'am, where we have to remove the trees because it's about public safety.
Part 2. Now, I called the commissioner, I called Commissioner 7 and 5 because I'm in both. They didn't even know about it. So even if you're going to come in and it's justified, there should have been some communication and notification to us as residents because we're taxpayers.
And Ms. Vincent, let me say, now I promised you personally, after we figured out nobody knew what happened to your trees, that I would be responsible for having Trees Atlanta replant the trees. So I can replant the trees. Now, if the trees go missing again, then that's between you and the DOT. So we did get resolution.
We will partner with you. What I ask for you to do is, we have a landscaping manual. Whatever you plant back, it just has to meet our requirements. And DeKalb County signs the mowing and maintenance agreement, we would be happy to put something back there.
Well, we'd appreciate that, because that was coming out of my budget too. And as I expressed, I'll replace the trees, but I can't keep going around like a rabid dog chasing my tail. We replace them and they go, and nobody know who took them. Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Andrew Bell. I'm a resident of DeKalb County, lifetime resident, and I appreciate this forum. It's really good. It's a lot of topics going on. I think that would help out with this gentrification situation is to encourage more people that actually grew up in DeKalb County, and to encourage the people that already are homeowners in DeKalb County to sell to their relatives, their kids, encourage their kids need Section 8 tools to improve your life. However, we have to hold these landlords accountable. You know, if they have tenants that aren't, keeping up the property, then their vouchers need to be, you need to make an easier way to remove their voucher and let somebody, another landlord who's willing to put their property on Section 8, allow them the opportunity. Along with that, I'm surprised no one from the school board here because just like a couple of people were saying, we do have a problem with the youth. And I think a lot of it is the lack of opportunity. We're lacking skills that we once had in our community. There are no brick masons, nobody doing concrete, nobody doing framing, electrical, plumbing, good paying jobs that we're not encouraging the youth to go into. And then I have a personal thing too, like everybody else. Mr. Reinhardt, my property is on Cobb Creek. There's a 24-inch drain that goes through my property, all the storm drain. All of this rain recently, I don't know if it's, global warming or whatever. I've lost about 10 feet in the last 10 years of erosion. Now, on the other property, on the other side of the creek, is a concrete wall. If I had a concrete wall, that would solve my problem. I keep hearing this $100 million, $200 million. Can I get like $30,000 for a wall?
JP, let's make sure we get this gentleman's information because that, again, that's a process and a conversation. Let's figure out whose liability it is for that wall and erosion. And we'll take our last question and we'll let you get out of here. And I thank you all for being patient. Yes, ma'am.
We actually have two questions. She will go, and then we have one last question.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Good evening. My
Good
name is Patricia Robinson, and I am a resident of DeKalb County. My question would be directed to Mr. Rich and to Mr. Irwin Johnson, and it's about the gentrification. I am a senior, and I'd like to stay in my house as long as I possibly can. One of my biggest concern is there anything proactively happening in the thinking about perhaps fixing the taxes such that seniors are not going to have their taxes exceed a certain point because we live on fixed income, and at the sale of the property, the new property owner would then pay whatever the new taxes are. Is that a clear question?
The tax commissioner's office does offer senior exemptions. And when you apply for an exemption, there's also what's called a property assessment freeze associated with that. And that assessment freeze, when you apply for that, it freezes the county part of your billing at the level, say if it was $100,000, and then the next year it goes up to $125,000, then you're frozen at the $100,000 level, which is taxed at $40,000. So that freeze was enacted back in 2007. So anybody that has a homestead exemption, if you don't have the freeze, if you've owned your home for many, many years, because believe it or not, even though we mailed every homeowner that had homestead exemption that year the application for the freeze, we did have a lot of people that did not return that. So we do have a lot of exemptions out there now that do not have the freeze. Everybody pretty much since that time has a freeze because it's automatic. But when it first became enacted, there were a lot of people that didn't understand it and they were afraid of it. So they did not apply for it. But on the county portion of your bill, that will freeze your assessed value, and so it won't go up. And then any value increase, you won't absorb that cost. Now, it does not apply to the schools, but as a senior, you may be able to qualify for a school tax exemption. And so if you're not paying any school tax, then that would help in that regard. And then, of course, you would be paying on a lower value with the freeze. So the freeze was enacted in part to help with that situation, to prevent inflation, to help with, the rising cost of housing.
And just let me say, it's not going to automatically happen. You're going to have to make it happen. when you get that tax bill. And we'll have our last question, and I'm going to bring this to close, as they say in the Baptist church, with all hearts and minds clear quickly. Go right ahead, JP.
I would like to address Ms. Allen, Ms. Shamley Allen. My question is, I'm a senior. I've had 3 water breaks on my property already. And I'm in the process of another, which is the 4th water break, and I can't afford to repair water breaks. I don't know what's going on, why these pipes keep breaking.
Miss Allen, and thank you. We want you to have something to say. Here you go. There you go.
Actually, I'm going to defer this to Ted. I'm the traffic engineer and manager, but I do have forms so I could get your information at the end, but I'm going to defer it down to Ted.
Thanks, Ted.
So these breaks, they're all on your side of the meter? They're not on our side of the meter? Your side of the meter. So there was a period of time, was your home built like in the 80s? No? 93. There was a period of time when there were certain types of material like polybutylene that were approved for service lines that deteriorated too quickly. And so there are some properties, and a plumber should be able to best advise you what you have, but there was a period of time where a lot of the service lines were a material that deteriorated quickly, and those are usually the ones that get frequent breaks. Now, anything on the street side of the meter, that's the county's system, and if it starts breaking too often, then obviously we should replace that line, not just keep replacing it. But if it's on the homeowner side of the meter, then that's part of your private plumbing system, and there was a period of time where the building industry was allowed to put in some material that you no longer could put in today.
The last time I fixed it, I had DeKalb County to fix it, so I shouldn't have this problem anymore. So I'm looking to DeKalb County to stand by their work.
And yeah, if it's on our side of the meter, then you're right. That's our service line, and we got to fix
It's
it.
on my side, but your people fixed it for me. I paid your people to fix it.
I don't know. We'll have to look into that because it's illegal. It's illegal for us to work on plumbing.
Well, Allison, okay. Let's have order in the parish. I saw Miss Carleen Cumberbatch come in, and I want to recognize you and thank you. I know that you had an obligation on behalf of the county. We spoke earlier this week, and there's a lot of people in this room that are frequent faces that make a huge difference in the community, and I just want to say to all of you, thank you so much. All elected officials, I'd also like to thank my aunt and my husband for coming out this evening to support me. Thank you. All elected officials, please stand if you're an elected official, because had I seen you over there earlier, I would have let you, yes, Mr. Clay, answer the Stonecrest question. Okay? And otherwise, yes, and thank you so much. We have our Solicitor General, Donna Scribbling Coleman, who is here with us this evening. We have City of Lithonia present. Thank you so much. And of course, I see Ms. Teresa Hardy, NAACP present. Thank you for coming out this evening. And are there any candidates for office this year? We'd like for you to stand and be recognized. Okay. Thank you. So at this time, to those that came out that sat on this panel, I've never been more proud of assembling such an awesome group of people. Thank you for coming. And at this time, I'll remain here if there's any individual questions. And don't expect follow-ups from the office until Tuesday, because Monday's a holiday, Tuesday is BOC, and Wednesday I'll get started going through the regular course of the week. Thank you.